it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 20 of my 2021 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be using MFT's It's Penguining to look a lot like Christmas. And I'm also going to be using some pattern paper from the Die Cuts with a View Holiday Cheer 6x6 pad. So I'm going to choose a piece of pattern paper that kind of combines all the colors that I want to use today, and I'm going to tuck that under my cardstock panel. I did stamp with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. For the black parts of my penguin's bodies, I'm going to use T3, T5, and T7. This is going to give me the look of black images, but they're not going to be so dark that they totally lose all the features. Having those lighter grays mixed in there is just going to make them look a little bit more dynamic. So I'm going to blend out with the T5 as my mid-tone. And then once I'm finished with that, I'm going to come in with the T3 and use that for my highlight shade. So you may have noticed from the title of this video that this is going to be another One Set 4 Ways video. And that is because we are coming to the end of this holiday card series. It's day 20 already, which is hard to believe. So there's only a few days left. And I just really needed a few extra Christmas cards. I did half of mine the other night. I got them all addressed and sent out this morning actually. But I still have some people on my list that I wanted to send cards to, but I just am running out of cards. So doing 4 cards at once is going to give me a little bit of a buffer, so I have a few more that I can send out. This particular stamp set is a good one for making multiple cards at once. For one, it is penguins, and I've mentioned before that penguins are a great image to feature when you are short on time because they are just really quick to color. They're basically black and white, and then you just have all the little accessory images. Still going to take you a little bit of time, but definitely less complicated than some of my other cards. The other reason that this set is really great for making these multiples at once is that all of these images are a really nice size and they can each stand alone on a card as long as you layer them up with, some pattern papers or something like I'm going to be doing today. And actually, if you are more like a clean and simple card maker, I think these could stand alone even on a blank white card with just a stamped sentiment underneath. But that is not me. I'm definitely not clean and simple. I like lots of pattern and color and detail, so that's how I'm going to proceed with these multiples today. So I've said also in the past that I do not mass produce cards. Each card that I make is always unique. I don't like to repeat the same card twice. It's just not my style, but I will follow a very similar format for the cards today, but each one is definitely going to still be individual, and we'll see more of that once we get to the later parts of the video. But for now, you can see that I'm using 4 different images. I mean, if you are a mass producer, you could certainly choose one of these guys and stamp him out multiple times and just use that. But for me, like I said, I wanted each card to be unique, and that starts by giving each card their own unique image. So I'm finishing up the last little guy here, doing the black parts of his body, which a lot of what is showing is that black because he has that little Christmas card that is covering up most of his belly. But I'm just trying to get in there and make sure I have some good shading on each of these guys. And then I'm moving on to the white parts of their body. And for that, I'm going to use T0 and T1. I'm going to start with that T1 and add a bit of shading around the curves over the eyes. And then I'm also adding a little shadow around the beak just to make that a little bit more distinguished. And then I'm going to do a little shadow on each of their bellies. I'm doing it at the top of their belly because each of them has something that is casting a shadow onto it. The first little guy with the candy cane has a scarf. The second little guy, his flipper is over in front of his belly. The third little guy has that bulky Santa jacket. And then the fourth little guy has both his scarf and that Christmas card. So adding that shadow right up at the top made the most sense to me. And then I'm going to blend that out with the T0, just softening that into the white cardstock, leaving a lot of that white cardstock showing because I don't want these parts to look gray. I want them to look white. And I will also just take my colorless blender and smooth over the edge of the T0 to just really soften that and make everything nice and smooth. And then while that area is still a little bit wet, I'm going to use R000 and R11 to give them some rosy cheeks. You can also do this later after the paper has dried, but doing it while it's wet just helps it fade a little bit more and makes it look a little bit more natural because that saturated cardstock is going to disperse that ink a little bit more. So then I'm moving on to my next combo, which is going to be for their beaks and feet. And I went with YR02, YR04, and YR07. So I'm doing the YR07 in the left side of the beak and also up close under the body on the feet. And that is going to give me some nice bright color there, but I'm going to fade that a bit with the next two colors and especially the YR02, which is nice and soft, just to kind of match in with the color palette that I'm using today. Obviously there's no orange in the color palette that you see in that pattern paper, but I thought if I did it in a red or a pink, it just wouldn't look right. So I decided to add that orange, but I wanted it to have a bit of softness to it, which is why I pulled in that YR02 to finish things off. So that's going to go all the way on the right hand side and then finish off the little tips of the feet. So now that I have finished up my penguins, I can move on to all of their little accessories. I'm going to have a lot of red on this card because there's a lot of red in the various pattern papers that I'll be using. So I went with my favorite Christmas reds, which is R24, R29, and R39. I started for the little Santa hat on this guy with that R39 right up above the hat brim. And then I'm blending that out with the R29 and filling in with the R24. And then I'm going to hop around and do the little guy in the center of the bottom row. He has the same style of Santa hat, so it's just really easy to go straight to that one and color that exactly the same with that R39 right above that hat brim. Because it is so big and bulky and looks like it's kind of folded up, I wanted to have a little shadow right above that and then the highlight at the top. While I'm at it, I'm going to do his little Santa jacket. So I'm adding some shadow with that R39 under each arm and also where his our left arm is kind of like down over his jacket. There would be like a shadow in that crease there. And then also where the two parts of the front of the jacket meet on that little line, I wanted to emphasize that. And also because there is a nice collar up above there, I did put a shadow at the top. And then I blended out with the R29. And I'm just making to use little circular motions to fill everything in with that R24 so I get a nice smooth blend. I'm also going to do the candy cane that is sticking out of his little bag of goodies with these shades. So I just quickly did that, starting with the top stripe and then skipping every other all the way down for what you can see of it. And then I'm going to do the same with the candy cane that the penguin is sitting on up at the top. I think he's using it as like a little sled, which is really cute. So I'm going to go ahead and color that in. I toyed with the idea of adding in some pink stripes on that as well. That's why you saw me hesitate there for a minute. But in the end, I decided to just go with the traditional red and white. So I'm just putting the darkest on the inside curve of that candy cane. Since the top is bent in that traditional hook, you know, there would be some shadow there where the light is not getting inside there. So that seemed to be the natural place for the shadow. And then I'm blending out toward the bottom edge or the top edge for the top of the hook with that R24. And then I wanted to make sure there was some red on each of these guys because the red is the one color that is going to be seen throughout all of the pattern papers. So I am going to do some of the stripes on this little guy's hat brim with those shades, and I will do some of the stripes and also the little stripy hat brim on this last little guy as well. So for the stripes, I'm going to be doing red, white, green, white. So I'm just skipping 3 and then doing the next stripe red. And then I'm going to do the same for the little top stripes there that you can just see a little bit of kind of bordering that hat brim. And I did color in the little berries on his Christmas card with the R24. For the little stripes on the hat brim, because there's so little space there, I'm just using that R24 to color those. And then I also wanted to do the ornament in red, but I knew for such a large image I was going to need 4 colors to achieve the look that I wanted. So it had enough of a dark shadow at the bottom and enough of a nice light highlight at the top. So I used that R39 down at the bottom like I did for everything else and blended up with the R29. Making sure to do like little flicking motions so that the ends of those little swipes kind of taper off, which makes it easier to blend into the next shade. And then I use the R24, and then I'm coming in with that R22 that I added in and doing those little circular motions again to break up the edge of the R24 and create a nice, smooth, shiny look. And I did go back with a few extra swipes of the R29 and R24 just to make sure everything was nicely blended. So the penguin at the top with the candy cane, I knew that I already wanted to put him on some pattern papers that were red, white, and pink. There's no green that's going to be in his patterns that I've chosen. So I wanted to do his scarf in pink, so there would be something on there to pull that color in. So I went back to my R11 and R20 and pulled in the R22 for the darkest. And I did do 2 layers of that just to increase that saturation and help with the blend, because there is a bit of difference between that R22 and the R20. So 2 layers really helps that look a little more seamless. And then I'm going to also add that to the little gift that is in the penguin in the middle of the bottom row in his little sack there, just to pull in that pink pattern, because he's actually going to go on the pattern that I've tucked under that panel, I believe. So I wanted to pull in those pink gifts. And then I also wanted to tie it in on the last little guy. So I'm going to use R11 and R20 with the R000 because I wanted it to be a little bit lighter to color in that envelope of the Christmas card. For my first green combo, I'm going with a darker green to tie in those darker ribbons that are on those Christmas gifts. And I chose G03, G09, and G29. So I'm going to start with the stripes on the first penguin on the bottom row's little hat brim there and color those in so we get a nice rich green. And then I'm also going to do the stripes on the last little penguin. So I'm just making sure that I get all of the ones that are supposed to be green in between the two whites that I've left. So once I have that, I'm going to take the G03 and color in the stripes on his hat brim with just that one shade since they're so small, and also the leaves on his little holly on that Christmas card. And I also use them for the mittens on the penguin in the Santa suit. So I just put the darkest at the base of the glove where that big cuff would be casting a shadow on it, and the lightest at the tips. And then for the white parts, I wanted it to be a different gray than what I used on the white parts of the penguin. So I went with warm grays, and I'm using W00 and W1. And I'm dotting in some texture with that W1 on any part that I want to look fluffy, and then just doing the same kind of stripes on the leftover stripes on the little hat brims and scarves there. Also doing the little dot texture on the white parts of the Santa suit to make it look almost like a woolen texture, and of course the little pom-poms. And honestly, it's light enough that you don't even necessarily have to blend that out, but I did add a little bit more color with that W00 just to soften it into the white and create a nicer transition. And I'm going to use those shades to do the white stripes on the candy canes as well. So I'm just starting on the top edge there because I want it to match the shading that I did with the red. Then I blended that out and moved on to my lighter green to match that lighter green in the gifts that you see in that pattern paper. They're a little bit more of a yellow tone, so I went with YG21, YG25, and YG67. So I used that YG67 at first, right up above that hat brim, and then blended out with the YG25. And then I realized that that lightest shade was just not going to work. It was way too much of a difference. So I actually pulled in YG23. You'll see me set the cap down in just a minute there, and I just went right back over that to kind of make that all blend nicer together because the lightest shade had kind of pushed the other colors back a little bit too much. So then I just blended that back out, and there you can see the YG23. I'm also going to use those shades to do the hat on the last penguin. So I'm starting with the YG67 and shading up toward the center on either side. Since that penguin is facing forward, I'm having kind of a central light source on him. So I will start to blend that out with the YG25, just making sure to really work over the edge of that YG67 because it is quite a bit darker. So it will take a little bit of back and forth to create a nice smooth look. And then using the YG23 for the highlight. The YG23 and the YG25 blend really nicely together without much issue, but that YG67, like I said, was a bit darker, so it just took a little extra work, but I think the combo is worth it in the end once you get it to blend nicely. And it does match those little gifts in that pattern paper the best that I could come up with of any of the Copic combos that I have. I'm going to do the underside of the flaps with those same shades, And then I will also do the little sack of gifts that the Santa penguin is holding. So I did a shadow on the right hand side where his body would be casting one, and then also a small shadow on the left where the bag was creased, and then blended that out. And I did do my second layer again to just smooth out all of those colors. And then the last thing to do is just the little top of the ornament, and I wanted that to be gold. So I chose YR20 and YR23. And then I took a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and started that off to the side until it was flowing nicely. And then I went over the eyes of all of my penguins to make them nice and bright and shiny. And then I trimmed these images out with their matching dies. So now I'm going back to that Holiday Cheer 6x6 pad from Die Cuts with a View, and I'm flipping through and choosing a whole bunch of patterns that I think are going to go nicely together. And I will be using patterns from both the front and the back of some of these. So I'm just taking that into account too as I choose these patterns, and double checking to see what I have to work with, and doing the best that I can to combine some nice prints together, because that's just one of my favorite things to do on a card. So I'm going to trim all of these down. For the focal panels, I've used the Lawn Fawn stitched circle stackables to die cut some pattern paper, and then the scallop circle stackables to die cut some chili pepper cardstock, and I used the stitch hillside borders to do a little snowdrift for each of these little images. And I did 2 of the backgrounds with the text print on them, and then 2 with a little snowfall on a pink background. So I'm going to glue those pattern papers down to the center of those little chili pepper scalloped circles. I'm just going to glue those down with my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue right in the center there, and make sure that everything is lined up nicely. So I want to make sure that the 2 that have the text print is going to stay straight, so it'll be straight on the card. So then I'm going to take the little snowdrift that I just die cut out of some scrap Spectrum Noir cardstock, and I'm going to glue those over top. So I'm just adding a different one to each of those. Each of them have a little bit of a different slant to them, so it gives them a little bit more of a unique look, even though they are quite similar. So I'll glue this last snowdrift on there, and then normally I don't adhere my images till the end, but today I actually need to adhere them right away because I don't have a ton of room to stamp a sentiment on there. So I want to make sure that I arrange them so that I can stamp a very small sentiment next to them somewhere or below them, whichever the case may be. So for some of them, I'm putting them over toward the left-hand side. Some of them I'm putting a little bit higher on the snowdrift so that they have room for a sentiment beneath them. I'm just trying to vary them a little bit. This little guy is going right in the center, but I have room down at the bottom. And then this last little guy is also going to go over toward the left. And then I'm going to pop these in my MISTI so I can start stamping those sentiments. I needed sentiments that were going to be with a very small font to fit on these little circles. So I'm using the Hello Bluebird Typed Christmas. I'm stamping those down in VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm stamping them down a couple of times to make sure that I get a nice bold impression. Because that is such a fine little font, you want to really be able to see it. So I did Oh What Fun on the first image with the little candy cane. This little guy with the ornament, I'm stamping Deck the Halls. The third little guy, which is going to be the one with the Santa suit, he is going to get 'Tis the Season. So I'm just trying to match a little sentiment that kind of goes with each of the images. And then the last little guy is going to get comfort and joy, which I thought tied in nicely with his little Christmas card envelope that says joy. And then I'm going to stamp on the insides of my cards. I'm not going to show you all 4 because it's going to get repetitive, but I will show you all 4 at the end. But basically, I'm stamping a different penguin and a different sentiment on the inside of each of these cards, and then I'll make sure that it lines up with a different one that's on the outside for each of the cards. So for the pattern papers, I have trimmed those down with the Lawn Fawn large stitch rectangle stackables, and then I selectively die cut the bottom edge of the flag piece with the stitch party banner dies so that I could create that fishtail banner with the stitched edge. And I'm going to do the same layout for all 4 cards. So for this first one, I'm going to use this gingham print with the red and white checks. And then I'm going to have the candy cane and peppermint print coming down from the left-hand side there. And then I will take that focal panel, and I thought about adding some foam tape on the back of it, but I decided to keep everything nice and flat for mailing. I thought that there was enough dimension on there just from the scene and the different layers that I really didn't need the foam tape. Card number 2 is going to feature the little guy with his ornament, so I wanted to use those Christmas trees. So I'm doing that for the flag print because I didn't want to use that as the base print. I felt like it would be a little bit too busy to cover the entire base of the card. So I did another candy cane stripe to tie in the pink and red of the text print on that background. And then for card number 3, I'm going to do the guy with the Santa suit, and I'm going to do a green gingham. So I'll just adhere that to cover the front of the card, and then like I said, I was going to do the print that I used as the coloring inspiration to go along with him. I thought the gifts went well with his little sack of treats there. So I'll get him situated, and then number 4 is going to be a gorgeous poinsettia print. I just thought that it went well with the little Christmas card that he was holding, so I'm going to adhere that down. And then I'm doing a little green print, which is the back of the presents. And it just has tiny Christmas trees on it, like a tone on tone. And then I'm going to adhere that focal panel in that same position that I've done on each of the cards. And by the way, the card bases were all made with Lawn Fawn Belly Slippers cardstock and stamped in bubblegum ink. So my last thing to do is bring in all 4 of the cards and add a bit of crystal stickles, and I'm adding that to all of the white little pom-poms, or for this little Santa suit, I'm doing it on all of the fluffy parts, the collar and cuffs and the hem and the little hat. I'm going to do it on just the little pom-pom on the hat for this little guy, and then also for the white parts of the Santa's hat on the last one. And I did add it also to the little topper on the ornament just to have it in one extra place on that card. So I'm going to lift each of these up to the camera so you can see all of the detail and also the insides. So you can see that each one has a different penguin and a different sentiment that kind of goes along with the front. Just like I said, super, super cute. I love these little penguins. I think they're really darling. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Christmas installment of One Set 4 Ways, and that it gave you some ideas of how you can make some multiples of cards and still keep each one unique if that's what you want to do. So if you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. We still have a few more to go of this holiday card series. If you're interested in any of these products, you'll find them listed and linked in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here is day 20 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series. You can click on either one to check them out. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.